Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm an author and teacher, and this is English Nerd. So I know it's been a few years since I have done an all about series, but I decided it was high time to dive back in. There were several reasons why I have not done another all about series like I did with Hamlet and Tale of Two Cities. You can take a look at those, of course, if you're interested. One reason is that I feel like I don't know any works quite as well as I know those. But another one is the amount of time that it takes to do the all about videos concurrently with videos of other kinds, because I know that people don't necessarily want months of just Hamlet. I mean, some people do, or months of Dante's Inferno. So I have to double up, and that has been difficult. But anyway, so I don't want to spend any more time talking about that. Let's dive into the first two cantos of Dante's Inferno. I'm going to be using two different versions of the poem for this series. So I'm going to be using this one, which is the one that my school uses. It's translated by John Chiardi. I think I'm saying that correctly. I don't love his translation style. It is not the most elegant sounding, but I'm very familiar with it, so I'm going to be using that as a touch point. I think one that is more beautiful and lyrical is the Hollander edition, which also has a lot of notes, so I'll be relying heavily on some of those notes for the people that I don't necessarily know well. There are definitely some people who are talked about in the Inferno that I can talk about as well, but there are many people in general, and I will have to do a little bit of digging on my own. So hopefully I have the answers that you're looking for here in this kind of analysis, commentary. But if I don't, you can always pose the question below or do your own digging as well. So let's take a look at the first two cantos of the Inferno. Wait, I'm going to use Hollanders because I love the way that they begin this poem. Absolutely gorgeous. So Canto 1. Canto just means song. It's like a chapter. So there are 34 of them in the whole Inferno. We're just going to be looking at the first two. All right, the first stanza of this poem goes, "Midway in the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost." One of my favorite things to do in the Inferno unit is when we first start this poem, I'll just put the first three lines up, and I'll have people just make observations. Observations. So, for instance, midway in the journey of our life. If you look at the original Italian, that is the pronoun. It's our. It's not my. It's our. And so, who is the other? Is it the reader? Is it God? Is it Beatrice? Is it somehow himself separated from himself? I mean, he does say, "I came to myself in a dark wood," so that could be he's kind of split and he needs to become unified and whole once again. It's amazing what comes out of that exercise. Some of the observations don't end up being all that useful, but that's one of the beautiful things about literary analysis. You don't need to only be making these impressive observations. You can make very simple ones and also come up with pretty profound realizations if you start compiling that information together. One thing I want to point out here is midway in the journey of our life. This poem, Dante's Inferno, is, it's part 1 of 3 of an epic, and he sets up some epic conventions right at the beginning. One of the ways that epics typically start is in the middle of things, and MIDI is sure to do that as well. So that means, since this is kind of a self-insert fan fiction with Dante himself as the main character, that he would be 35. That's traditionally the middle of one's life, according to this biblical span of 70 years. So he's 35. He realizes he's in this dark wood, and all of a sudden we get not only that it's an epic, but very quickly as well, we get that it's an allegory, that it's literally this dark wood, but it's also figuratively this dark wood. And in fact, a dark wood is going to appear in the middle of the story, and I'm going to signal when that is. And I think that is meaningful as well. So he's having a midlife crisis. He's separated from the straight way, which is a traditional way of talking about the way to God, the way to heaven, and he needs to find his way back. So what happens is he's horrified by the place where he finds himself, and he heads toward this hill that he can see. And he wants to go up the hill, but there are creatures that are blocking his way. So going up the hill is, again, very allegorical, as well as the beasts. Different commentators disagree on what the beasts represent. It seems pretty clear-ish what sins they represent, but for our purposes, I'm just going to say that they all represent sins. There's a lion, a leopard, and a she-wolf. The she-wolf is this insatiable creature that is the one that ultimately makes him lose hope from making the ascent up this hill by himself. He wants to save himself from this dark situation, I want you to notice. And part of the point is that that is not the way that these redemption stories go. This is not the way to find the place where he ultimately belongs in heaven. He needs to first recognize the source of the problem, his sin, and then he can move past it instead of just pulling himself up by his own bootstraps. So he's blocked because he has these various sins and inadequacies, and he just can't do this on his own. So it's at his moment of greatest despair when he loses hope completely. He's at rock bottom, and this shade appears out of the mist. It's very ghostly, and it's this figure. He can't even tell who it is, and yet he calls out to this figure. He says, have pity on me, whatever thing you are, whether shade or living man. And happily, this person is Virgil, the Roman poet who wrote the Aeneid, who was one of Dante, the poet's favorites. And so he lets Dante, the character, become friends with Virgil. They actually have a lot in common, Dante the poet and Virgil the poet, because they both are Italian epic writers, and that's their main connection. But he loved his style and things like that as well. So Virgil is the one who comes out of the mist, and Dante, the character, is just thrilled that he says, my true master and first author, the soul maker from whom I drew the breath of that sweet style, whose measures have brought me honor. I mean, he's having a great time. It's like if I wrote a poem and I had myself meet Shakespeare and we became friends. This would be a kind of laughable poem if Dante weren't so darn good. Like, he can actually pull this stuff off, right? So when Virgil shows up, he says, follow me and I will be your guide. I'm going to be the one who will help to save you, he says. This is around line 105 if you have line numbers in the version that you're using. And it's interesting that Virgil, the character, commentators agree, even at the time when Dante was alive, there were commentaries being written and saying that Virgil represented human reason. Human reason can take you a good chunk of the way to God, to redemption, was the thought, but not all the way to heaven itself. So when, around line 105, it says, therefore, for your own good, says Virgil, I think it well that you follow me and I will be your guide and lead you forth through an eternal place. He's talking about the Inferno here. I'm going to be your guide through hell as the first stage of this 3-stage journey that he goes on to describe. When he says, follow me and I will be your guide, the wording is so similar. I don't think that this is, it could be a coincidence, I don't know. But in the medieval English play, Everyman, there's a character named Knowledge, and she says almost an identical thing, identical wording, follow me and I will be your guide, to the character of Everyman. That was written about 50 years after after the Inferno. So I'm not sure if it's a reference, but kind of a cool connection there. So Virgil goes on to explain, we're going to go through this eternal place where you're going to hear people crying in lamentation and pain. And then next you shall see upon a burning mountain souls in fire and yet content in fire, knowing that whensoever it may be, they will yet mount into the blessed choir. So the mountain, the burning mountain where people are their souls in fire and yet content in fire, that is the Mount of Purgatory. So I'll explain later on the sort of cosmology of Dante and how he views the sort of alternate earth that he's talking about. It's interesting because it seems like he simultaneously believes in the hell that he's describing, but he's also aware that the whole thing is heightened and fictionalized, including even some of the geography of the world. So there's this huge mountain that's a literal mountain where the people, they're in layers, and once they have atoned for their sins, then they move on to heaven. And then Dante says, if it is still your wish to climb, a worthier spirit shall be sent to guide you. Which kind of cracks me up. If it is your wish to climb, why would you stop at purgatory and say, well, that seems good. I mean, I saw hell, I saw purgatory. Who cares about paradise? Like, why would you, what do you mean by that? But when he says, a worthier spirit shall be sent to guide you, that is Beatrice, who is, at this point, a woman who is blessed and in heaven. But as far as the background of Dante goes, the poet Dante fell in love with a woman named Beatrice, very young woman, who died young as well. And so she is also given a place in this as a sort of heavenly celestial figure who can take Dante that final leg. Because Virgil, human reason, this is working on a few different levels, can only go to the gates. Well, it's not quite the gates of heaven. It's actually Eden that's up there with Lethe, the river running through, once you get to the top of purgatory. But human reason can only take you so far. Can take you those first two legs, but then in order to actually make that leap into paradise, something else is necessary, and that is divine love, which Beatrice represents. So she's the one who will take him the rest of the way. And Dante says, okay, lead me on, which he is about to rescind in Canto 2. But essentially, those are the events of Canto number 1. All right, we're on to Canto number 2. Canto number 2 opens with, O muses, O high genius, be my aid. O memory recorder of the vision, here shall your true nobility be displayed. This is the second epic convention that I'm going to point out. In medias res, starting in the middle of things, happened in the first canto. Here we have the invocation of the muses, which is another traditional way to open epics, and that's happening here in Canto 2. There's also a certain kind of loftiness of language mixed with a simplicity of subject that is typical of epics, along with some other elements. But here we have these benchmarks that are unmistakable. It's not just lofty language, it's the invocation of the muses here in this case. As soon as Canto 2 begins, Dante the character is concerned. I mean, if you were going to go on a tour through hell, I think you'd be concerned as well. But he's backpedaling as they're walking toward the gates, because again, it's a physical place, much like Purgatory. Mount Purgatory is physical. The Inferno is a physical tunnel almost into the earth, which again, I'll get into. So Dante, backpedaling, starts out with this kind of false humility. He says, "Poet, you who must guide me before you trust me to that arduous passage, look to me and look through me. Can I be worthy?" He goes on later to say, "How should I dare? By whose permission? I am not Aeneas. I am not Paul. Like, I am nobody. I'm just this random Italian poet. How should I have the right to do this and go on this great epic journey?" And I mean, that's fair on the one hand, but Virgil immediately calls him out and says, you're acting like a coward, which is a bit surprising. Maybe not surprising, because Dante does need to go through this step in order to find salvation. He's hit rock bottom in the previous canto, and he has nowhere else to go. He just doesn't want to do the internal work that it takes to make it to salvation. So Virgil explains why and how he found him, just to put his mind at ease. And so he says, okay, Dante, I was in limbo, which we'll see in Canto number 3. So I'm going to save that one. Or Canto 4, I think, is where Canto 4 is where it's clearest. So he was in limbo, and Beatrice comes down. It says, a lady so blessed and so beautiful that Virgil prayed to her to order and command his will, called to him. And she explains that she was motivated by divine love, as she traditionally represents, to find Dante, her dearest friend and fortune's foe, who is strayed into a friendless shore and stands beset by such distresses that he turns afraid from the true way. And news of him in heaven rumors my dread, she says, he is already lost. I come afraid that I am too late risen. This is interesting to me. People have speculated where Dante himself would go in the Inferno had he died there in that dreadful wilderness. And people have different theories. Some people think that he would belong, well, I'll tell you, of course, as we go along, but I'll just give you a little preview. Some people think that he would belong with the grafters in Circle 8. Some people think that he would belong with the violent against themselves, which we'll talk about. I'll be anyway, just trust me. Just trust me to be your Virgil through this. It's going to be very controversial, and I don't agree with everything that Dante wrote, but I'm going to do my best to kind of explain where I think he was coming from. So some people think that he belongs there in Circle 7. And I feel like there's one more spot where people the Circle 5 with the wrathful. And I think that the best case to be made is in Circle 7, because Beatrice fears that she's too late. I mean, he's only 35, and he's healthy, and so what could have sent him there but himself. He's alone in the dark wood. There aren't any enemies around that we see. I guess they're the beasts, but I'll see if my theory bears out in your opinion as well. This is not something that's generally accepted by commentators that I'm aware of in the same way that Virgil representing human reason is. So there are several other ladies that are also mentioned with her as well. There's Lucia and Rachel as well. So what we start to see is a pattern. We start to see a lot of patterns, actually. But we start to see a pattern of 3s. All the stanzas have 3 lines, with very, very few exceptions. We have the 3 divine women. We have the 3 beasts blocking the hill. We have the 3 legs of the journey. We have lots of 3s everywhere, and that's very intentional. There is a sort of significance to the number, the numerology, I guess you could say, you could use that word, that Dante uses throughout this book to show that there is a divine element kind of imbuing everything. There is the pattern of God even on the way that the Inferno is ordered, which we'll see. But I want you to keep an eye out for those 3s, because this is a great book to practice your observation of patterns. And patterns are so much of what literary analysis is all about, and understanding some of this great literature is just, where are those echoes, where are those patterns, and that is one. So I think, I mean, there of course are lots of details in here. I think that is all that I wanted to discuss. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. Any more insights that you've learned about these cantos, put those down below as well. I would appreciate the additional insight, because although I've taught Dante's Inferno many times, there is so much there that I don't know everything about. So I'm happy to learn more from you if I can. So that is it, Cantos 1 and 2 of Dante's Inferno. In Canto 3, they actually go into hell. So if that's the part that you are looking forward to hearing about, then next time will be the time for you. So yes, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I will be updating the All About Dante's Inferno every week. So don't forget to get those notifications. All right.